The gala was a cathedral of curated illusion. Inside the grand ballroom of the American Women, American Values Gala, every detail glistened like a lie dressed in diamonds. The vaulted ceilings soared like the ambitions of those beneath them. Crystal chandeliers hovered overhead, their cold sparkle mimicking applause that never needed to begin. White floral arrangements lined the aisles, meticulously symmetrical, unnervingly perfect, like an algorithm had arranged them to avoid dissent. At the center of it all stood Melania Trump. The First Lady was a vision of cold perfection, draped in pearl-colored silk that clung like marble, her posture regal and still. Her makeup was immaculate, her hair an architectural feat. Every angle of her was designed for the lens. And tonight, the cameras drank her in from every corner of the room. She approached the podium with the poise of someone who had rehearsed this moment, not just the words, but the silence between them. There was no teleprompter. There didn't need to be. The speech was memorized to the comma. In a world that asks women to yell to be heard, she said, her voice a soft blade wrapped in velvet, we remind them that real strength whispers. A pause. Planned. Executed. The room erupted in applause. Not a single soul clapped first. They all clapped together, as if the rhythm had been preordained. Jasmine Crockett didn't clap. She stood near the back, arms not crossed but relaxed. Her expression neutral, her breath even. She wore a charcoal black pantsuit with no accessories, no earrings, no brooch, not even a lapel pin. She didn't need decoration, she needed eyes. And from where she stood, she saw everything the audience missed. She saw the stage managers discreetly texting in group chats to cue applause. She saw a senator in the fourth row typing, "She's selling ice in the Arctic," to someone off-screen. She saw the press corps already drafting their glowing coverage before the speech had even finished. But most of all, she saw the pattern. The same speech Melania gave last year, same cadence, same phrases, same breathless claims of elegant strength. And yet, tonight felt different. 2 days ago, Jasmine had received an unmarked envelope. No return address. Just a stack of neatly printed documents and a yellow post-it that read, "Not all roses are clean. Start with the ones on stage." Since that moment, the air had changed. Not dramatically, subtly. Like the pause before a storm breaks open. Backstage, as Melania walked past her, their eyes met, just for half a second. But in that flicker, something shifted. Not fear, recognition, like two predators acknowledging each other before the first move. Melania had smiled. Jasmine hadn't. Now, as the First Lady stood at the podium declaring that women don't shout, they shape, Jasmine repeated the words under her breath. "They shape quietly," she murmured. Then she whispered, "Let's see how they shatter." The night ended with headlines already spinning. First Lady dazzles at gala. An evening of strength and grace. Melania Trump reclaims the narrative of modern womanhood. But across town, in a quiet apartment near Capitol Hill, Jasmine Crockett wasn't reading headlines. She was recording. She wore a loose gray sweater. Her hair pinned up. No makeup, no lights, no script, just a woman staring into her phone, holding something inside that had waited far too long to be said. She hit record. Women don't shout? Let's be clear. Silence never gave women their rights. Voices did. Loud ones, sharp ones, brave ones. She paused, not for drama, but for clarity. We didn't shape history by whispering. We marched. We bled. We were jailed. And we spoke. That's how we earned our place at the table. And no pearl-covered speech will rewrite that truth. Another pause. So no, I won't whisper to be accepted. I speak because too many of us never got to. She tapped post. No caption. Just truth. By the time she took a sip of tea and dropped her phone on the couch, the algorithm had already begun. In 17 minutes, the video had 20,000 views. In 40, 250,000. By morning, 2.3 million. The shares came from all corners. Activists, students, celebrities, even a retired Supreme Court clerk. The caption changed from post to post. But one phrase kept echoing. She said what we were all thinking. By noon, the backlash came like clockwork. Morning talk shows clutched pearls. Who does she think she is, calling out the First Lady? It's divisive. It's why people don't take progressive women seriously. One panelist described Jasmine as an angry woman in a pantsuit picking a fight with grace. But the real eruption came online. 2 hashtags emerged within hours. Hashtag speak like Jasmine. Hashtag sit down Crockett. TikTok exploded with explainer threads and praise. Facebook lit up with rage posts. College students debated it over lunch. Suburban donors whispered about her tone. Jasmine said nothing. She didn't post. She didn't retweet. She didn't gloat. She watched. She observed the storm swirl around her like a practiced pilot tracking a tornado. Because she'd seen this before. The system never panicked at the facts. It panicked at the woman brave enough to speak them. Inside the East Wing, Melania's circle initially dismissed the video. It's just a moment, one aide said. The internet forgets everything. But by that evening, the word containment floated through the halls. Her digital team combed through every quote. Legal reviewed donation records for optics. One press assistant was reassigned from a school lunch initiative to background Crockett. Melania said nothing, at least not publicly. But in private, she watched the video. And after a long pause, she narrowed her eyes and whispered 3 words. She's not bluffing. The next morning, Jasmine arrived at her office before sunrise. No aides, no reporters, just the hum of an empty building. On her desk sat another envelope. No name, no stamp, no return address, just a manila folder, anonymous and impossible to ignore. Inside was a stack of donation ledgers, handwritten annotations, printed emails with subject lines like "Community Partners" and "Discretion Preferred." And at the top, another yellow post-it. "Follow the flowers." The documents bore a symbol she recognized instantly. A red rose, outlined in gold, encircled by elegant script, the Women's Legacy Fund. Melania's crown jewel. A fund that, on paper, championed education and maternal health. A fund that had been featured in Vogue, praised at the UN, and plastered across Instagram with smiling schoolgirls in developing countries. But what lay in Jasmine's hands told a darker story. Shell nonprofits, obscured grant routing, lobbying groups pushing anti-abortion legislation, money meant for youth outreach, landing in accounts tied to far-right super PACs. Jasmine's jaw tightened. She flipped page after page. Some of the grants were so blatantly misused it felt like arrogance. Others were buried under bureaucratic misdirection. All of it felt deliberate. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Then she powered it off. This wasn't a time for reaction. This was a time for precision. Because if even half of what she held was true, this wouldn't just implicate a charity. It would call into question the legacy of the First Lady of the United States. And maybe more. Jasmine leaned back, staring at the rose logo again. Red, elegant, curled in on itself like it had something to hide. She whispered, "Not all roses are clean." Then she locked the folder in her drawer and turned out the light. The following 3 nights, Jasmine didn't go home. She lived in her office, couch cushions doubling as a bed, her suit jacket rolled into a pillow, meals reduced to vending machine trail mix and coffee strong enough to keep ghosts awake. No aides, no press, no assistants. Just her and the data. She'd taped spreadsheets to the walls, printed maps with color-coded flags, highlighted flowcharts with arrows that snaked like veins across cities. Alabama, Ohio, Florida, names she knew too well. Groups that wore smiles in public but sank daggers behind closed doors. Each document in the envelope unraveled more truth. Small grants, supposedly innocent, began pointing to something deeper. A $25,000 education enrichment check to a family values group in Alabama. A $40,000 partnership with a parental rights initiative in Ohio. A $15,000 grant to a wellness conference in Florida. Alone, these figures meant little. But Jasmine had seen this dance before. The Alabama group had publicly led campaigns to shut down the state's last abortion clinic. The Ohio initiative had published toolkits for defunding sex education in public schools. The Florida conference had hosted speakers promoting conversion therapy under the euphemism, identity clarity. And each bore the same three-letter code in funding documentation. WLF. Women's Legacy Fund. Not officially political, not officially partisan, but unmistakably aligned with a singular agenda: control. Over bodies, over narratives, over futures. Jasmine leaned back in her chair. Her eyes were dry from hours of staring. But her resolve? Sharper than ever. She opened a new folder on her desktop and named it simply Rose Circuit. Because roses don't just bloom, they spread. And when left unchecked, they choke everything else. The first meeting was small. 3 senior Democrats in a private office 2 floors above the main chamber. Jasmine didn't bring slides, no flashy visuals, just a manila folder and a calm voice. She laid out the trail. She named the groups. She traced the money. She didn't speculate, she presented cold facts, clear patterns. At first, they listened. One even muttered a low whistle when she outlined the Ohio loop. But then, the shift. The coughs, the crossed legs, the downward glances. She wasn't presenting anymore. She was becoming inconvenient. "You've clearly done your homework," said Representative Langston, voice thick with polished gravitas. "But Jasmine, we need to think big picture. This isn't just about policy, it's optics." Congresswoman D'Angelo chimed in, her tone syrupy with sympathy. "We're not saying you're wrong. But timing matters. Re-election cycles are heating up. A smile, a knife disguised as kindness. She's the First Lady," Langston said, flatly. "Even if you're right, the backlash could hurt us more than her." Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She let silence stretch just long enough for them to squirm. "So, we're going to ignore a coordinated campaign using federal nonprofit protection to fund regressive ideology, because it's inconvenient?" she asked, calmly. "No one's saying ignore," D'Angelo replied. "We're saying tread lightly." Langston leaned forward again. "Personal stakes make you passionate. That's admirable. But it can cloud judgment." There it was. The gentle insult wrapped in diplomacy. The push back into place. The leash they'd tried to pretend was a crown. They offered her an alternative: quietly forward the materials to the Oversight Committee. Let it get buried in procedure. Maybe a closed-door hearing. Maybe a staff-level memo. Maybe nothing. When Jasmine left the room, the folder remained untouched. By the time she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed. Her chief of staff. One of her committee assignments had just been rotated. Another press appearance was postponed. Not retaliation. Just the machine doing what it always did. Sanding down sharp edges. Painting over the cracks. Pretending everything was fine. Jasmine stood inside the elevator, staring at her reflection in the metal doors. Hands steady, eyes clear. They wanted her manageable. They wanted her polished. They wanted her whispering. But Jasmine hadn't come to Washington to be manageable. She came to light fires. The smear campaign started the next morning. It began with a 42-second clip. Jasmine's voice raised, her finger pointed, frustration in her eyes. No context, no let up, just the moment she'd lost composure for a fraction of a second in a committee hearing months ago. The caption was predictable: unhinged. The radical side of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The clip went viral within hours. Right-wing news anchors grinned as they played it on loop. Is this who we want shaping our daughters' futures? Another angry liberal shouting about truth. This isn't leadership. This is emotional instability in a power suit. The same 42 seconds repeated endlessly. The volume of her voice. The furrow of her brow. Never the question that provoked it. Never the facts she had been fighting for. Just noise. They didn't debate her evidence. They reframed her image. She wasn't a whistleblower now. She was a spectacle. And her own party? Silent. A colleague texted, "Tough break. Lay low a few days." Another rescheduled a town hall indefinitely. Staffers who once brought her coffee now walked past with tight-lipped nods. It wasn't abandonment, it was self-preservation, and Jasmine understood that too well. She scrolled through the comments on her last video. Too emotional. Another angry black woman playing the victim. You had potential. Now you're just noise. Noise. That word followed her like smoke. She didn't scream. She didn't tweet. She just sat quietly in her office and did what none of them expected. She listened to the silence around her, to the system that had turned up her volume just to drown her message out. Somewhere, Melania's team was watching the numbers climb. They hadn't denied the allegations. They didn't need to. They had reframed the messenger. And for now, it was working. Then came the message, 3 days after the clip dropped. Encrypted, sent through a secure burner app. The sender didn't reveal their name, just fragments. I worked in WLF finance. I have proof. Internal codes, unreleased ledgers. They used floral nicknames for the packs. They asked to meet. No press, no aides, no phones. Jasmine agreed. Tuesday. Quiet diner in Arlington. Back booth. 8 p.m. She didn't tell anyone. Not her chief of staff. Not her aides. Not her driver. She wore a hoodie. Left her congressional badge in the glove box. It rained that night. A steady downpour that soaked her blazer and fogged the diner windows. She ordered tea she didn't touch. And waited. 8 o'clock. 8:10. 8:25. Nothing. At 8:39, her phone buzzed once. Sorry. Something came up. We'll explain soon. Then silence. She waited another hour. At 10:03, she left. Back home, she checked the app. The account was gone. No trace. No record. Nothing. She didn't sleep that night. At dawn, her phone buzzed again. Different number. Different message. Careful, Congresswoman. She burns quietly. Jasmine stared at the screen. Not fear. Recognition. This wasn't conspiracy. This was pressure. This was power whispering. And she was officially on its radar. The morning after the anonymous warning, Jasmine walked into the Capitol building like it was any other day. Her blazer was pressed, her hair pulled back, a legal pad in her hand. No one could see the hurricane inside her, but they would feel it soon enough. On her desk sat an unmarked envelope. Inside, a single typed line, no signature, no header. Silence or suffer. Her chief of staff Marcus stood nearby, his voice low, almost a whisper. 3 committee reassignments, oversight, budget, women's health, effective immediately. Jasmine blinked. Once. Rotated? She asked, voice flat. They're calling it procedural realignment. She knew what it was. Technically correct, strategically lethal. The oversight committee had been her only path forward. Her only legal channel to investigate the Women's Legacy Fund. Now, that door was closed, sealed without fingerprints. Later that afternoon, during floor debates, she raised her hand to speak. Ignored, raised it again, overlooked. A junior member got the nod instead. Jasmine sat still, her expression unreadable. But inside, the tension built like a storm behind glass. Not loud, not dramatic. Weaponized silence. She sat at her desk long after sunset. Her inbox overflowing with hate mail and veiled threats. One email subject line simply read, "Know your place." She didn't cry, didn't shout. She leaned back in her chair and whispered to herself. This is what the fire feels like, right before it spreads. That night, the storm came. Rain sheeted across the Capitol steps, turning marble into mirrors. Thunder echoed over the dome like drums before a battle. Jasmine ignored every call to stay home, every text from her comms team, every warning from friends and aides. She walked through the storm like it belonged to her. On the Capitol steps, a small crowd of protesters stood soaked but unshaken. Young people, black women, LGBTQ students, immigrant mothers, veterans in ponchos. Signs clutched to their chests like armor. When Jasmine appeared, someone gasped. Phones rose. Live streams blinked to life. She didn't use the podium. She didn't need elevation. She took the microphone cover off with her bare hand, rainwater running down her wrist, and began. They told me to be careful. They told me this wasn't the right time. They told me silence was dignity. My mother heard those lines. My sister bled because of them. And I am done pretending silence is noble. The wind howled. The microphones shook. But her voice didn't. If they want to drown me for speaking, let it be in truth. Not in fear. Let the flood come. I'm still going to stand. The crowd erupted, not huge but fierce. You don't have to like how I speak. You don't have to like how I fight. But you will not tell me that polished lies deserve more airtime than painful truths. Phones flashed. Flags waved. They took my committees. They shut my mic off. They erased my name. But they can't make me disappear. Because I'm not here for comfort. I'm here for collision. And if I go down. She looked up, directly at the soaked cameras capturing her every word. It won't be quietly. That line would go viral. Posted, reposted, quoted on banners, printed on t-shirts, album intros, TikToks, protest murals. By midnight, the video had 1 million views. By morning, 10 million. The Capitol didn't acknowledge her speech. Not officially. No votes change. No apologies were issued. But whispers stirred. Staffers stared longer. Senators paused mid-conversation. And then came the invitation. Private briefing. Senior strategy session. Room 313. West Annex. No topic. No contact. Just a line on her calendar. But Jasmine knew DC's language of omission. Room 313 was windowless. Soundproof. Meant for compromises no one would admit to. Inside sat a woman Jasmine didn't recognize. Not a politician. Not a staffer. A fixer. Old money. Gray eyes. Neutral suit. A smile that looked like it had outlived 100 scandals. Congresswoman Crockett, she said. Thank you for coming. Jasmine didn't sit. Let's skip the theater, she said. The woman nodded. Efficient. I like that. She slid an envelope across the table. There's an opportunity. A new path. You're a rising star, Jasmine. And we think your talent could be used in broader leadership. Something with more reach. Jasmine stared. In exchange for what? The smile never faded. You let the Women's Legacy Fund go. Quietly. No hearing. No scandal. Just a natural pivot. The administration admires you, she added. Why fight when you could lead from the inside? Jasmine's voice didn't shake. Do you know my sister's name? The smile paused. No answer. Didn't think so, Jasmine continued. Because girls like her? They don't exist in rooms like this. She stood, the envelope untouched. If this is what power looks like, keep it. It took 3 weeks, 5 procedural battles, and a mountain of resistance. But Jasmine did it. The House Committee on Oversight officially scheduled a public hearing to review federally protected nonprofit funding patterns. The title was dry, deceptively generic, but everyone in Washington knew exactly what it meant. The Women's Legacy Fund. Melania Trump wasn't required to attend. Not legally. But the optics? The pressure? The fire? It forced her hand. Let them see grace under fire, she told her team. And just like that, she was in. The hearing room transformed. Security tripled. Cameras everywhere. The marble pillars looked less like decor, more like sentinels. Jasmine arrived first. No makeup. No jewelry. A single folder in her hand. The same one she'd carried for weeks. Melania arrived second. Ivory suit. Hair flawless. Eyes unreadable. Her heels didn't click. They whispered. When she sat, the room tilted, not from movement but energy. Jasmine didn't look away. The chair cleared his throat. Congresswoman Crockett, you may proceed. She leaned forward. Mrs. Trump, do you recall approving a $75,000 grant to Future Families First in Georgia? Melania didn't flinch. Yes. That organization ran ad campaigns targeting Black and Latino women with false information on reproductive health. A pause. We support family values. Messaging is determined by local partners. Jasmine didn't blink. So you weren't aware of the content? We trust our affiliates. Next file. $40,000 to an Ohio initiative pushing parental notification laws for trans youth. We believe parents should be involved in their children's education, even when it endangers those children. Silence. Melania's expression remained still, but Jasmine saw the tremor in her fingers. And then Jasmine reached for the black remote beside her folder. Let's talk about symbolism. She pressed play. A recording began. Audio. Slightly fuzzy. Clearly Melania's voice. Black women. Great optics. No real policy value. They photograph well. That's useful. The room exploded. Journalists dropped pens. Advisors whispered frantically. Melania didn't move, but her eyes faltered. The chair leaned in. Congresswoman, may I ask the source? Verified. Anonymous. Melania finally blinked. Jasmine didn't gloat. Didn't smile. She leaned into the mic. Optics, Mrs. Trump, are powerful. But so is truth. And millions of women across this country just heard what they always suspected in your own voice. The room held its breath. The audio stopped, but the silence it left behind screamed. The next morning, Jasmine woke up to fire. Not real flames, but their digital equivalent. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Missed calls, voicemails, emails, headlines, mentions. But it wasn't the hearing they were talking about. It was her. Congresswoman Crockett unhinged in live testimony. Radical fury on display in Capitol. Meltdown or leadership? You decide. The clip was only 42 seconds. No context, no nuance. Just her voice raised, her finger pointed, and her eyes fierce. All the truth from the hearing? Gone. What remained was the image of an angry woman of color, packaged, replayed, dissected. Overnight, Jasmine became a spectacle. Commentators didn't argue with her facts. They didn't refute the evidence. They didn't even mention the Women's Legacy Fund. Instead, they turned her into a caricature. This isn't leadership, one pundit sneered on cable news. This is emotional instability in a pantsuit. You want role models? Another scoffed. We need grace under pressure, not rage at a microphone. Even fake videos appeared. AI-generated clips of Jasmine yelling, storming out of hearings, tearing up a speech Melania never gave. None of it was real. But in the age of scrolling, reality didn't matter. Silence from her own party followed. Loud in its absence. A few colleagues texted her. Tough break. Lay low for a few days. Others canceled town halls. Unshared press ops, skipped eye contact in the hallway. And what hurt most? The people who once praised her fire were now treating her like a threat. Not because they stopped believing her, but because she'd become inconvenient. She scrolled through the comments on her last post. Too emotional. Another angry black woman. You had potential. Now you're just noise. That word, noise, followed her like a curse. She wanted to scream. Instead, she listened, to the silence, to how it narrowed around her like a noose. She imagined Melania's team in a war room, watching views climb. They hadn't denied the facts. They hadn't argued her points. They had simply reframed the messenger. And it was working. But Jasmine wasn't finished, not even close. Because while the world was watching an edited version of her, the real Jasmine Crockett still held the file. 3 days after the hearing, a message arrived. Encrypted. Untraceable. I have proof. Let's meet. Tuesday. Quiet diner. Arlington. Back booth. No press. The sender claimed to be a former financial analyst with direct access to the Women's Legacy Fund. No name. No voice. Just numbers. Specific ones. Ones Jasmine hadn't uncovered. She didn't tell her team. She drove herself. Left her congressional ID in the glove box. The rain returned, not poetic, just cold. At 8:03 p.m., she ordered tea she didn't drink. She waited. 8:10, 8:25, 8:40. Her phone buzzed. Sorry, something came up. Can't meet. We'll explain soon. Then silence. At 10:03, she walked to her car under the rain. Checked the message again. The account was gone. No history. No trace. She didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, her phone buzzed again. New number. No contact. Just one line. Careful, Congresswoman. She burns quietly. Jasmine didn't flinch. She read it again. Then again. She burns quietly. Not a threat. A message. Melania didn't need to tweet insults or slam podiums. She smiled. She waited. And things around her caught fire anyway. Reputations, witnesses, funding streams. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a fortress. And Jasmine had just rattled the gates. By the end of the week, the Capitol felt smaller. Colder. Staffers avoided eye contact. Aides hesitated before entering rooms she was in. 3 of her committee assignments were reassigned. Her budget access restricted. A sealed envelope marked internal waited on her desk. She opened it. A single sheet of paper. Silence or suffer. No return address. No stamp. She locked it in her drawer. Marcus, her chief of staff, looked at her in disbelief. "We need to report this." "No," she said. "That's exactly what they want." They wanted her rattled, isolated. They wanted her to back down. Instead, she showed up to every vote. Every hearing, every meeting. They shut off her mic? She passed handwritten notes across the table. They cut her from press ops? She filmed updates on her phone. They erased her name from schedules? She showed up anyway. Jasmine understood now. This wasn't just about truth. It was about endurance. They didn't need to disprove her. They just needed to outlast her. And that wasn't going to happen. And then, something shifted. Not inside the Capitol. Outside it. What began as a whisper turned into a ripple. Then a surge. A 21-year-old organizer in Detroit posted her hearing clip with the caption, "She's not angry. She's clear." A poet in New Mexico turned her storm speech into a spoken-word anthem at a campus protest. A t-shirt maker in Oakland printed her quote, "If I go down, it won't be quietly." By the end of the week, those shirts were sold out. The hashtags spread. Hashtag speak like Jasmine. Hashtag quiet fire. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about every nurse, teacher, student, and activist who'd been told to wait, to whisper, to shrink. Her refusal to disappear had lit something much larger. And Washington was starting to feel the heat. It started with 5 women. No press. No podium. No permission. Just a borrowed conference room in the Rayburn House office building. A scratched table. Paper coffee cups. A whiteboard with no markers. And 5 chairs filled by 5 women who had all, in different ways and on different days, been told to wait their turn. Jasmine stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the Capitol dome glow in the amber wash of morning. Around her sat 4 congresswomen, all women of color, each from a different district, each carrying her own history of silencing and erasure. They hadn't come for a resolution. They came because something had shifted. The silence had cracked, and now it would not reseal. Jasmine turned from the window and spoke. "We don't need their table. We build our own." And just like that, the fire block was born. No headline announced it. No party leader endorsed it. No network ran it. But within a week, the shift was unmistakable. They issued a statement of intent. Ethics, justice, accountability, not as slogans but as standards. Not vague, not optional, not decorative. Every dollar traced, every vote logged, every meeting recorded. They didn't shout. They didn't storm. They just showed up, calm, fierce, relentless. When their questions in committee were dodged, they didn't react. They let the silence do the talking. It unnerved people. Some called it tone policing. Others called it brand building. One headline labeled them the diversity mob. But outside the chamber, something else was happening. Voters were listening. Staffers began requesting transfers to the new offices. Volunteers started offering legal help, policy expertise, digital support. And one by one, other representatives, mostly first and second term members who'd once been isolated, began to reach out. By the end of the month, the fire block had grown to 9. Then 12. Then 17. They didn't demand power. They became it. And for the first time in years, Washington didn't know how to control them. Because the bloc didn't want a bigger slice of the pie. They were here to burn the mold. Melania Trump disappeared, not officially, not with ceremony, but slowly, like mist retreating from a window once the truth had warmed the glass. A statement appeared online one Tuesday morning at 7:03 a.m. First Lady Melania Trump will take a temporary sabbatical to focus on personal reflection and wellness. There was no press conference, no interview, no gala appearance, no photos in children's hospitals. Just absence. Inside the East Wing, staffers described a shift. Fewer meetings, fewer floral displays, fewer updates. One aide anonymously said, "She's shrinking the room around her." Photos were scrubbed from donor websites. 2 major fundraising events were postponed indefinitely. A third was cancelled, due to venue availability. But Washington is fluent in omission. Everyone knew what it meant when a spotlight dimmed without warning. This wasn't scandal. It was erosion. And Melania, once the monarch of silence, was now consumed by it. Jasmine never gloated. She didn't dance on podiums. She didn't tweet, "I told you so." She didn't even say Melania's name again. She didn't have to. Because power doesn't always fall with a bang. Sometimes, it steps back. And the silence Melania once wielded so well? Now, it followed her. 3 months later, a routine ethics session, symbolic motions, low attendance, just another day in the Capitol. Jasmine sat quietly, near the front. Detached, calm, watching the minutes tick by like raindrops on glass. Then it happened. She felt it before she saw it. A shift. Not noise, not motion, just presence. She turned slightly. And there, in the last row of the chamber gallery, sat Melania Trump. Tailored ivory, perfect posture, expression unreadable, not disdainful, not triumphant, just watching. No one else seemed to notice. But Jasmine did. They locked eyes. 1 second, 2, 3. Then Jasmine turned away. Not in submission, in decision, because she wasn't here to perform. She was here to remain. And this wasn't a rivalry. It wasn't a war. It wasn't even personal anymore. This was about what comes next. The next morning, a high school girl in Chicago stood up at her school board meeting and recited Jasmine's storm speech from memory. In Texas, a nurse posted a video, holding a patient's hand, whispering the line, "If I go down, it won't be quietly." In D.C., a janitor found a post-it note taped to the back of a committee chair. "We don't need their table. We build our own." And in New York, a girl named Laia, Jasmine's sister, walked into a college health clinic. Her first appointment, she wore a T-shirt with 5 words printed in bold. Now the fire walks too. Jasmine never claimed credit. She didn't write books. She didn't sign TV deals. She went back to work. Day after day, vote after vote, question after question. But something was different. When she walked through the halls, people moved. Not away. With her. And in every room she entered, even the ones where her mic had once been cut, there was now a flicker of pause. Of weight. Of reverence. Because they all knew what she'd done. She didn't just fight power. She redefined it. Not with noise. Not with rage, but with fire. Quiet, relentless, unforgettable. And the cracks she exposed? They would never close again.